Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. We've got a very special guest joining us on today's episode. Diego Rosarin is a very famous Brazilian YouTuber. He's got well over 1 million. I think probably like 1.6 million followers now around there on YouTube. He's got million followers, over 1 million on Instagram, and he's big on Twitter as well. He is an expert political commentator, breaking down what is going on in the world, challenging the official narratives from the mainstream media, whether it's economics, whether it's geopolitics, or even the military and proxy wars that we see raging today. So without further ado, Diego, how you doing? Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm doing great. Jackson, thank you so much for having me. We have been discussing about this conversation for a couple of months now. I'm really happy to be here. So let me know, where are we going?
Well, next time it'll be in person. That's what I know for sure. What do you think about the state of affairs of Latin American politics today? It's not getting a lot of attention. Most of it is, focused on Russia and China and the Middle East right now. But I think very soon we'll see, the tides change and these situations will quiet down. And there's going to be probably, with Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, increased focus on Latin America. So what do you make about the leadership across Latin America and the state of affairs? Is it strong? Is it willing and able to defend itself right now?
Perfect. So great topic to start with. Let me start by pushing back on the concept of Latin America. Most people are not familiar with this story, but the concept of Latin America was imposed by France on South America. It's actually a very, very old intention of balkanizing the region. Because I think, and that is probably the main point, the main conundrum, the main context in which we have to understand the politics of the global South, especially in America. We are divided, even though culturally, historically, economically, materially, we share a lot of the common basis. What we need to understand in this moment in time is that BRICS, it's not necessarily a revolutionary geopolitical formation, but it opens space for future insubordination to happen. And that is exactly in the context of which I want us to discuss about South America. Because of BRICS, suddenly the countries in South America can look for options and better trade deals and better trade partners and actually develop some type of sovereignty and aspire to develop sovereign projects for their nations. And in the past, under hegemonic, democratic, liberal, late bourgeois ideology, it was pretty much impossible. All countries in the South of America were just like under the booth, and they had to pretty much give up their resources and their sovereignty in exchange for survival. And because of BRICS, now we can start having different conversations. And from that general aspect of analysis, then we can go into detail into each specific country, because I think the concrete material and historical conditions of each of them deserve a double click, a more in-depth analysis. But I think overall, that's the angle in which I would like people to understand the conditions in South America right now. Latin America, it's a French imposition. So it's a type of neo-colonial philosophy that we have to get rid of, because we're not Latin in the sense as connected, as dependent directly to the Latin roots. We are connected because we speak Spanish or Portuguese, which are two languages that are 99.9% compatible. We share economical values, we share material values, we share cultural values, we mostly share religious values as well. And we should be in the path of becoming the third largest geopolitical bloc in the world today. But we are balkanized because for a very long time, we were just America for the Americans under the Monroe Doctrine. So I think now is the time to wake up. And it triggers a lot of critical analysis that we have to take into account and develop sovereign projects for each of the countries, but with a shared horizon in mind for the South of America.
Do you think that there's anyone who is promoting something like that at this point in time? I mean, you look at Africa, and it's in its infancy, and it's been, I guess, it's tried to rise up many times in the past. But you have someone like Ibrahim Traore or Mr. Chiani. You have the Sahel Confederation that are promoting a Pan-African ideology and awakening and economic, birth. In Latin America, do you have that?
Well, it's a dream, my friend. It's
Sorry,
really a dream.
South America. I'm so used to saying Latin, and it really never made sense to me anyways. Latin
Right?
America. I'm like, how does that even make sense?
Right.
But South America.
Thank you so much. I know it was a trauma for me as well. I still make that mistake recurrently as well. So for everybody listening, don't worry. That's why we learn. That's why we study in order to improve. So who will be the leader? And it's an interesting question because you see, the way I see it is that, and this is probably a topic that we can get more in depth later on, but I will recurrently go back to this concept. There cannot be democracy before sovereignty. National sovereignty, it's a precondition for a functioning democracy. You cannot aspire to be a democratic country if you're not a sovereign country. Okay. And in that sense, I think most countries in South America are not sovereign. They are in a way overdetermined by economical dependence and residues of colonialism. So how could a leader emerge from a non-sovereign country unless he's via a revolutionary process like the one we had in Burkina Faso or in other countries in Africa? So the only countries with real sovereignty, even if it's hanging by the tip of the nail to sovereignty, are countries like Venezuela, like Cuba, probably Bolivia is closer on. But the big countries, the one that should really exert the leadership role position in the formation of this new geopolitical bloc would be Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina. And those three countries, sadly, they are very far away from sovereignty. We can discuss the three of them in double click because I think the three cases are very interesting. But that's why also it explains very well historically and militarily why the US is constantly exerting pressure in those three countries specifically: Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico. Mexico, because of the geopolitical relationship with America, the huge frontier, the material dependency, the huge trade dependency. Brazil, because it holds the largest bodies of water and natural reserves. Also because of the size and the fact that Brazil shares border with most countries in South America. It's a super strategically important country. And Argentina, because of the position of lithium, and also the connection of the rivers between Argentina and Brazil that will serve to articulate the commerce in South America. So for the US, it's fundamental for these three countries to remain subjects to the will of the empire. So unless those three countries really develop some sort of project of sovereignty, I'm not even talking about direct sovereignty, a project for sovereignty is very hard for us to aspire to really become this geopolitical bloc. So leaders are emerging, like this trend is becoming a reality. For example, Gustavo Petro was just in China and he signed an agreement to become part of the Silk Road project. President Nicolás Maduro just came back from Moscow with trade agreements with Russia, with China, and other countries as well. Even India is now interested in purchasing petroleum directly from Venezuela. So yes, these natural leaders are emerging because of the contradictions that are leading the way for necessity for these leaders to emerge. But so far, we don't have Ibrahim Traoré to serve as the ideological pillar and the beacon of virtue to lead the project. This is my reading, actually.
It seems like it's a real mixed bag there right now. I mean, you brought up, let's go to the three you brought up: Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil. Mexico, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the previous leadership of AMLO, current leadership of Claudia Sheinbaum. To me, it seems like that's on the path towards something good, and it's on the path towards something that maybe might resemble some form of sovereignty. Argentina is, it's no need to even talk about that. And Brazil, I mean, you have a lot of weird things happening in Brazil too, blocking Venezuela from joining BRICS, allegedly. You've got Lula, which, this was a few years ago, but he was saying some weird things about Russia, and maybe is still a little bit scared of that subject in Ukraine. What do you think the future is for these three countries?
So let's go one by one, starting with Mexico. First, I'm I'm very in favor of current president Claudia Sheinbaum. I think she's doing a fantastic job. The elections are speaking by themselves. She got an overwhelmingly positive results, and it's weird to see, because democratic elections in the last 3 decades are always won by marginal margins of difference, like 3%, 4% is the average in America. And Dr. Claudia Sheinbaum won by almost 30 points difference. So I think the opposition is morally defeated in Mexico, totally morally defeated in Mexico. And this is mostly due to the success of Andrés Manuel López Obrador work in the previous administration, for sure. There was a lot of improvements for the working class, for the lower socioeconomic classes. Even I'm a Marxist at heart, so it's kind of hard for me to just divide by socioeconomic levels. So the working class got a lot of benefits under the rule of Andrés Manuel López Obrador. But regardless, we do have to be critical by the fact that, for example, Claudia Sheinbaum won the elections, and a week after that, she hosted the CEO of BlackRock. So can you really talk about a sovereign project that is winning elections under social democratic rule, hegemonic liberalism, and then has to sit and negotiate with Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock? Is it really sovereign, or is it just convenient to power? You know, like, this is my true question. Unless I see a real commitment with the real pushing topics on the interests of the working class, like, for example, property rights, number one, property rights. If you have a president that is not talking about developing the means of production, you know, really progressing the productive forces of the country, and is not talking about the interest of the working class, then you probably have a social democratic neoliberal that is going to end up masquerading the whole thing under discourse and under narratives, and is going to keep respecting the interests of the capitalist class. And this is exactly my point of tension in the current geopolitical arena in Mexico. Yes, it's popular. Yes, it's progressive in some ways. Yes, is improving the immediate lives of lower socioeconomic classes. But is it changing the material relationships of production? Not really. Is it developing sovereignty in, you know, like nationalizing key industrial categories? Not really. This is my current concern with Mexico. But also, I have to be very modest with my critiques, because I also understand that an insubordination in Mexico right now will turn military very quickly. You know, Trump has been currently harassing Mexico by saying that, you know, the cartels are a terrorist organization. And this is a perfect excuse to justify military intervention. So I understand that the government of Mexico has to be extremely careful with whatever they say and whatever they do, because the bluff is already there. You know, the threat is already there. We could easily turn into the Ukraine of America if Mexico suddenly decides to start making trade agreements with China and proposing to enter BRICS. We can easily become the Ukraine of America. So I also understand the restraint and the pacing and the patience of the government of Mexico, because the situation is highly critical. The U.S. will never allow Mexico, with this amount of power, to become a trading partner in BRICS or even to join BRICS. It will be like the missile crisis in Cuba all over again, because we're too close. You know, they have this saying in Mexico that Mexico is too far from God and too close to the United States. That's the conundrum of Mexico.
And as for Brazil, what do you think about the situation here? You talk about the need for revolutionary movements. You know, I can't say I'm an expert on Brazil. I know a few groups I've met people from the Brazilian Communist Party, and it looked like they were just it sounded like they were just for like a bunch of college students, liberals from Berkeley University. You have some groups like maybe some left populist, right-wing people like Nuevo Resistencia, or however you say their name, but they're very small. And Lula seems like he's not the Lula of several years ago.
Yeah, both are very, very right analysis, right on spot. So let me tackle those two. So as a Marxist, and I try to almost keep it hidden, because I think the current state of Marxism, especially Twitter Marxism, it's a pity. It's pitiful. It's ridiculous. I try to stay as far away from it as possible. I'm a Marxist in the traditional sense of saying that I want to overcome that which I deny at its highest point. So I'm a Marxist in the sense that we have to develop powerful productive forces and sovereign projects of development. If we don't have those discussions, we're not talking about Marxism, because Marx made an analysis of the productive forces, of how we use our freedom to transform nature in what we need. That is production. We use our freedom to transform nature in what we need. We produce what we need to survive. So when we talk to Marxists and they don't talk about the means of production and the property of the means of production and developing powerful, amazing, futuristic means of production, I'm not talking to real Marxists. I'm talking to, like you said, postmodern pseudo-liberals that read late theory and post-Marxist and didn't really understood it, and they're mostly doing posturing. And it's a pity, but not only in Brazil, I will say mainstream Marxist points of view are there, which is very sad, because I think they were completely kidnapped by the liberal academia. And I think the problem in Brazil, it goes to the fact that Brazil had a lot of progressive movements that were necessary because, in a way, Brazil was a very diverse country. We were one of the latest countries in the world to abolish slavery. So we needed to catch up. Sociopolitically, we needed to do that catch up. But because of that late blooming in racial policies and inclusions, we are also, in a way, asynchronical to the current geopolitical movements in the world. And I think the case of Lula is representative of that, because Lula started as a syndicalist. He was representing the will of the proletariat. He lost his finger working on mechanical machinery. He was really like a factory guy. He has this speech that is really impressive when he became president of Brazil for the first time. He said that, I never had a title in my life. My first title is the title of president of Brazil. Can you imagine? Like a true proletariat hero. It was really inspiring. I grew up like looking up to Lula. And I think Lula, after he went to prison, like very similar to South Africa, when he came out of prison, he came out with a very actualized vocabulary of sovereignty, talking about the importance of nationalism, talking about the importance of defending the country, of developing industries, of becoming a powerhouse, of becoming a truly potent country in the world. So I think jail time did really good for Lula. But also the issue with Brazil is that you cannot rule out the power of Itamaraty. Itamaraty is the diplomatic branch of Brazil. And Itamaraty in Brazil is super powerful, like extremely, extremely powerful. And ideologically speaking, is mainly liberal. Like the metaphysical presuppositions, the humanism, the metaphysics of illustration, they are the ruling ideology within Itamaraty. So those are incompatible in the sense, because I think liberalism will tend towards the deregulation, towards the reproduction of capital as an end in itself, and they will go almost directly against or as an opposing force to sovereignty, because they are globalist, humanist, universalist values that go against the development of a truly sovereign national project. So I think those two contradicting forces is what will help us understand the geopolitical decisions made by Lula, but also directly from Itamaraty as well. Because, like, for example, the meeting in BRICS last October, when President Maduro was there and everybody was considering, because Cuba joined, they were also considering of adding Venezuela because it's the second most sanctioned country in the world at the moment. And Lula decided not to show up. And there was this weird agenda of allegedly he had an accident, he could not travel. So then Celso Amorim, as the representative from Itamaraty, was the one to communicate that they were not comfortable with the current stage in which new members were decided to join BRICS. And it was very convenient because some members were already pre-decided, so they joined. But at the last second, Venezuela was left off the table. And then now we're going to have the BRICS meeting in Brazil in October. So we will be then again the time to discuss if Venezuela can join us or not. And then also there's another material contradiction to justify the alleged blocking from Brazil to Venezuela, is the fact that Venezuela holds the biggest natural reserve in the world of oil, the 5th largest reserve of gold in the world. And they're also top 20 in the 10 most important raw materials for the 3.0 industry currently. So Venezuela is a small country in size, 28 million inhabitants, very sovereign, but also very, in a way, isolated geopolitically because of American pressure, but extremely, and I cannot emphasize this enough, extremely important in terms of energy resources and richness. So we could even say that Brazil is acting their own national sovereignty interests, because Brazil is also selling oil to BRICS. So you see, like in the end, the dialectic of history is not only the dialectic of classes, but also the dialectic of empires and the dialectic of states. So this is what we have to understand. There are common shared class interests, but also opposing national interests and opposing imperialistic instincts. So in those three arenas of dialectical movement is where we have to do geopolitical readings. So that would be my recap of Brazil.
It's incredibly insightful. I'm thinking about it in a whole different way now. When you look at Venezuela, Cuba, and Bolivia, those were the first 3 countries you mentioned that are, varying levels of the most sovereign in South America. They've all got their problems. You just discussed some of them with Venezuela, who's probably the strongest maybe right now. But Bolivia's got a whole host of problems that I don't even begin to understand. You've got former President Evo Morales, who, it's out there, so I'll say it. He was accused of having fathering a child with like a 17-year-old girl. And now he was accused of that. Now they're trying to lock him up in prison. He decides he's running for president. And then someone tried to assassinate him. He accused the current government, which is his former political party, Arce, of doing this hit job. Now they're doing this great march with all the union workers that's led by Evo Morales. He's trying to save himself from prison time. What the hell is going on here? Both sides are accusing each other of being U.S. agents, by the way, also.
Correct. Yeah. Well, this is my limit. Like, this is my limit in the sense of the concept I said I was going to recurrently go back to. There can be no democracy without sovereignty. Democracy without sovereignty becomes a backdoor for geopolitical interests. And this is what we're seeing. Where is the truth in all these accusations? The truth is in material reality. The truth is in discord. The truth is in controlled opposition. And for me, this is the subtle reading of what is happening in most countries in South America that don't have sovereignty. You don't know who's funding them because elections are extremely, extremely expensive. And with those countries without sovereignty, without powerful industries, the money has to come from somewhere. And that money represents a geopolitical interest. It can either be drug dealing, as the case of Salvador and Ecuador. It can be the interest in the lithium triangle, as it was openly said by the Security Department of the U.S., that they said that the triangle of lithium was a matter of national interest. Can you imagine? Like, another country in miles, thousands of miles away from yours is a matter of national security. It's interesting that we cannot critically read into the meaning and the strength behind those words. So what is happening in the lithium triangle, in, of course, Bolivia? It's a matter of national interest for the U.S. Is it a matter of democratical intentions? Is it the will of the people? Is character assassination a new fancy game that we're currently playing that determines the morality and the value of presidential elections? Please. I mean, this is not new by any extent of the world. Character assassination is probably the first CIA tactic that we grew up with. Like, this is normal, But then again, we cannot have democracies without sovereignty. If a country doesn't go through a period of hardship, anti-imperialistic sovereignty, they cannot jump fast forward into democracy. And what is the conclusion for me? And I want people to keep this in mind. These examples in South America, Bolivia, also with the pity of my heart, Evo Morales, but also, for example, Jose Mujica, Pepe Mujica from Uruguay, is the limit of reformism. There is a limit of how much you can aspire to transform your material reality by democratic politics. This is the limit. The moment you step out of line and you do something that goes against the national interest of the US, then you will see the true reality and the true limit of democracy. Then it will hurt. And according to me, this is what we're seeing now. It's becoming an impasse. Nobody's going to win the democratic game in Bolivia.
It's a real shame. It could get very bad there very quickly. It's looking ugly. And the last one, which is the weakest and the most ugly and unfortunate situation of all, that I'd like to ask you about, is the situation in Cuba, because I visited Cuba for the first time maybe 2 years ago, I think. And what I saw was just horrific. It was a very sad, very, very, very sad state of affairs. I mean, you stand on a tall building and it looks like, I just went to Havana, but it looked like the entire city was just like carpet bombed or something. That's how much the blockade, the sanctions, and whatever lack of development in the government has wrought onto the people. It looks like a scene of a war. It's crazy. So what do you there's a debate online about what's wrong with Cuba. Are we going to blame the blockade, or are we also going to address the fact that maybe there's a big leadership problem here? What do you think about what is going on in Cuba?
Yeah, first of all, I thought you were going to say Argentina when you started to say like the worst example. I thought you were going to mention Argentina, and maybe we can go there after this topic with Cuba. But what is the issue with Cuba? What people have to consider is that yes, the conditions in Cuba are depressing almost. You can truly suffer with the people. You can feel it. Like people have to suffer hardship every day. And I have a lot of Cuban friends. Like I've had even conversations with the team near President Diaz-Canel. I'm aware of the history. I understand. But what people have to understand is that Cuba, before the revolution, was supposed to become the whorehouse and the casino for America. This is what people have to understand. Without the revolution, Cuba today would be like Haiti or worse. This is what we have to consider against. When people make these comparisons, we cannot judge the socialist model of Cuba versus the capitalist model of Singapore. Like those abstract comparisons that economists make online. The conditions are very different, historically and materially. So yes, we have to consider the fact that the development we have today is due to historical contingency. So applied forces, blockade, a lot of intervention, constant resistance. But also, as you said, we have to be self-critical in the sense that was it the best way to develop sovereignty and resist imperial opposition? It's kind of hard to judge from the outside. But I think, again, I'm going to go back to the fact that as a Marxist, my way forward is that the geopolitical formation or the socio-historical formation that is going to succeed is that which is able to produce the most amount of benefit for the majority of people. It will choose itself. It's not a matter of subjective freedom in a metaphysical sense. It's a matter of material imposition. Systems win historically because they are able to produce more material benefit to the majority of people. That is why China is winning. But that is also why socialist projects in Latin America failed, because they were not able to produce more material benefits for the majority of people. It was also due to the fact that they tried to develop a centralized planned economy with a very small amount of raw materials, with zero industry aside from petroleum, and completely isolated from the rest of the world. So, of course, you cannot compete. It's impossible to compete. Also, relying a socialist project on a single raw material like petroleum, lithium, gold, whatever, leaves you extremely susceptible to economical sanctions. It's a very fast way to completely annihilate your sovereignty and to let the spirit of your people be completely demolished by poverty and scarcity. And the US knows this very, very well. Cool, you're going to be a socialist project. You want to be independent. Nice. How are you going to survive? We have plenty of petroleum to make all our country very rich. Nice. What if I don't let you sell your petroleum? What are you going to do now? Where's the toilet paper going to come from? And then you completely isolate it from the world. And I think that's why, the 20th century's socialist project really struggled with. And this is why I will go back to the sentence of saying BRICS is not inherently revolutionary, but BRICS opens up the space for new revolutionary projects to emerge. Because the way we're seeing geopolitical agreements with BRICS is that they respect different political projects. They respect them. They truly respect them. You see how China is doing business in Africa, and it's incredible. Africans can't believe it. Like, how come you guys are not coming with private planes, giving lectures in your language and imposing your values on us? This is new. We never knew this before. 13 currencies from Africa are still printed in France. That's ridiculous. We're in the year 2025, and Africa is mostly a colonial region still. So BRICS opens up the space for new revolutionary projects to emerge, but also for past failed revolutionary projects to reinvent themselves. And this is where I place Cuba. People have to be very much aware of this. Capitalism is a 6-century-old project that failed spectacularly the first 2 centuries. The development of capitalism in India with the development of the West India Trading Company was a catastrophe. They kill, if you count with the same logic and the same parameters as the Black Book of Communism that recurrently comes up with this number of 100 million victims, if you apply the same values, the same variables to judging the victims of the development of capitalism in the last 6 centuries, you come up to the number of almost 2 billion direct victims to the development of the capitalist system. But I'm not a moralist. I understand these are historical processes, and historical processes are determined to fail. This is the nature of dialectics. Resolution of contradictions via trial and error and solutions that come out on top of each other. I want to overcome that which I deny at its highest point. Okay? So, communism has what? 100 years? We're just seeing the tip of it. It's going to fail a lot. But as a dialectical praxis, it will overcome itself. Every time it comes back up, it becomes better because it actually learns from what they do. There's a very, very simple example, and I'm going to cut my response short. The central planning, the economic investment in the Soviet Union, where they measure which category was overinvested and underinvested. It took 6 months to make that calculation. So the Central Committee will come up, judge every one of the 100 categories that were strategic for the USSR, and determine which category was overinvested, underinvested, and then try to come up with a balance for it. It took 6 months to do that. You know how long it takes the Communist Party of China to do that same calculation nowadays? 8 minutes. 8 minutes.
It's crazy.
It's insane. It's insane. That's why Lenin said this. What is communism if not the mass appropriation of the technology of former private property? What could we achieve if we appropriate for the common interest those former technological developments that were done for the private interest? This is what we're seeing in China. This is what we're going to see in the future, according to me.
I sure hope so. I agree with you 100%. I hope you look. I think we need to have some more Diego Rosarin content in English. I think more Americans need to hear this stuff. That's what I think.
I'm flattered. Thank you.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I will come to Mexico very soon at some point in the near future, and we'll sit down. And we got clearly more stuff I got in my notes here, but we didn't even get to most of it. So we'll have a longer conversation and touch on all these subjects and more. Where should people follow along with you if they want to stay up to date, if they don't already know? I'm sure most of them do.
First of all, Jackson, thank you so much for the conversation. I'm a real pleasure. Anytime I'm open to keep up the talk. It's always good to talk with people like similar minded and with similar goals when we know we are walking towards those directions. And if people want to follow me or are interested in my opinions, you can follow me on any social media with the same name, Diego Rusarin with a double Z. My name is originally from Italy. I'm pretty much active in all social media. I have around 10 million followers if you sum everything. Because like in other countries it's different. Like for example, Facebook is still very big in South America.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why. So in Facebook, I have a huge following of over 5 million people. But then again, 1.6 in YouTube, I'm around 1.1 in Instagram, and then here and there everywhere. But what I do normally, I don't really care about. I think those numbers are, the owner of those numbers are our enemy. So at the moment, we're just trying to survive and just overcome what we're denying. But if you guys are interested, I make content pretty much in Spanish, Portuguese, and eventually I'm going to start doing more things in English, following your very wise advice.
Very good. I love it. Thank you so much for the time, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon, my friend.